Good morning and welcome. So I know that you've gotten some good treats, and I hope you got a Oreo cookie if you want one as well. We are very blessed to have Pastor Colby with us today from the Presbytery, and he's already given you all his stats, so we won't go through that again. But he's here today to answer any questions that you have and to give some information, and we do have some stuff on the screen. We'll be doing that as well. We are also joined with someone on Zoom, so that's why we've got all our technology working here as well. So welcome, and please, if you do have questions, please, this would be a great place to talk about those as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer, and really it's a blessing to be with you today. I really enjoyed being in worship with you. And I'm looking forward to this time. Can you hear me okay? And can they hear me okay, or do I need to turn the mic?
I can hear you.
We can, all right, and maybe you can hear me even better now. All right, so Dave Colby, Transitional General Presbyter for Winnebago Presbytery. We're going to unpack some of each of those words in my title a little bit. Today's an opportunity for me to be with you, kind of like, I'm seeing it as like an ask me anything. And we'll see where it goes. But I'm eager to hear questions you might have for me about Presbytery, trends for Presbyterians, either in our region or nationally, issues you're concerned about, where you are as a congregation, the upcoming pastoral search process you're going to be involved in, any of that's fair game, stuff I didn't think to describe, go for it as well. But first, let's think a little bit about that Presbytery. Do you know this song, right? I am the church, you are the church, we are the church together, right? You change one word and it's still true. I am the Presbytery, you are the Presbytery, we are the Presbytery together. You can't be a Christian on your own. As filled with humans as it may be, we need the church. And it's kind of the same for a local congregation. You're the church, but you're not the entirety of the church. We're connected to one another. I'm going to read a couple paragraphs from the Book of Order. General principles of councils. Councils, the mutual interconnection of the church through its councils is a sign of the unity of the church. Congregations of the Presbyterian Church USA, while possessing all the gifts necessary to be the church, are nonetheless not sufficient in themselves to be the church. While possessing all the gifts necessary to be the church, you are the church, you're not sufficient to be all of the church all by yourself. We're called to share with others, both within and beyond the congregation, the task of bearing witness to the Lordship of Jesus Christ in the world. The particular responsibility of the councils of the church, including the Presbytery, is to nurture, guide, and govern those who witness as part of the Presbyterian Church, to the end that such witness strengthens the whole church and gives glory to God. Presbyterian Church USA is governed by councils composed of presbyters elected by the people. These councils are called the session, the presbytery, the synod, and the general assembly. All councils of the church are united by the nature of the church and share with one another responsibilities, rights, and powers. And then let me go on just for one more paragraph. The presbytery is responsible for the government of the church throughout its district and for assisting and supporting the witness of congregations to the sovereign activity of God in the world, so that all congregations become communities of faith, hope, love, and witness. As it leads and guides the witness of its congregations, the presbytery shall keep before it the marks of the church, the notes by which Presbyterian and Reformed communities have identified themselves through history, the 6 great ends of the church. So, you're the church, but you're not sufficient to be all of the church, the whole church. We're all connected nationally, globally, regionally. And for us, that region is Northeast Wisconsin. Can we look at that map that's on a page? Yeah. I just found a little tool. If anybody's interested, I can send you the link. It's got a super long URL. But this is a map of the Presbyterian Church, and we've zeroed it in on the northern half of the country. And you can see flags here on various places. Those tend to be presbytery offices or synod offices, and then circles are congregations. Can we zoom in, double click in Northeast Wisconsin? And this is it's still a work in progress. So like you don't see any circles down below us. Doesn't mean there aren't Presbyterian churches. That's just they haven't completed that work, I didn't think.
Okay,
Yeah, can you drag? Try just pulling.
our internet is catching up here.
All right. Anyway, it's a cool little toy that I just found. It's a way of kind of realizing how close we are to other churches that are just outside of Northeast Wisconsin. But our presbytery goes basically from Sheboygan over to Marshfield and then up to the boundary of the Upper Peninsula. Includes Door County, and there are no Presbyterian churches in Door County. I don't know the history on that. But tell me about Northeast Wisconsin. You guys are the experts. Tell me about Northeast Wisconsin. What is unifying? What's different? How would you characterize Northeast Wisconsin? Any major metropolises in Northeast Wisconsin? Wausau. Yeah, Wausau would probably be the biggest city. Stevens Point, some college towns. Green Bay has a football team, I hear. Right, the biggest small town in America, right? What's that? So yeah, Madison is below us in John Knox Presbytery. Milwaukee is over from us and below us and is in Milwaukee Presbytery. We do a lot of actual work with all of the Wisconsin leaders, but it's interesting, right? Northeast Wisconsin, kind of, we know we're not Madison, right? And we know we're not Milwaukee generally. Anyway, it's a cool little tool, but this is our orders here. That one is in process of being corrected because that's the First Presbyterian Church of Abbotsford, and that's in our presbytery, but looks like it's outside the bounds. Anyway, so that's our region. Lots of small churches. You're one of our bigger churches in the presbytery. There are some small rural areas, college towns, mid-sized cities. I'm the Transitional General Presbyter. So let's talk a little bit about this word transitional. It's a word that's picked up some steam in recent years. Some call it interim. Largely means same thing. And certainly churches like yours are in a transitional time. You have an interim pastor now. You had an installed pastor, Jack Harrison. Then you went for a period with no pastor. Then Ken Locke came as your interim pastor. And you're going to be looking for the next installed pastor. I don't like the term permanent. I've just come to think nothing in life is permanent, so I kind of avoid that line of thinking. But you're going to be, you're right on the cusp of probably electing a pastor nominating committee. I think you're on track for that to happen next week at your annual meeting. Great. But so you are really in transition, right? The church kind of was one thing with Jack Harrison's leadership, and it's a little, Ken's helping you a little bit now during this interim time, and you're going to shift a little bit, but there's going to be parts of your DNA that carry through, right? There are going to be things you care about, that you have cared about, you're going to always care about. But then there's some other parts that are going to shift a little bit. But it also feels to me like a whole lot of our world right now is this in a time of upheaval and transition. We're not the same as we were pre-2020, March 12th, 2020. So I would love to hear a few things from you. How have you changed as a church since pre-COVID times? Anybody on Zoom want to answer that? Right? Carol, joining us from Zoom. That's something I bet you didn't do that before COVID, right?
Like what is live streaming?
Live streaming, yep. Have any of you, you're all in this, sorry. I'm looking at you, but I'm also looking at Carol or being viewed. But How many of you worship on live stream? Yeah, so some of you sometimes. Right now you're in person for those who are here. What else has changed for you because since COVID?
Attendance is still down.
Attendance is still down. Yeah. How much do you think?
Okay. Carol has something to say. Do you want to share, Carol?
Yeah, and then we're going to hear from Carol, but what was that percent?
25%.
Yeah. Yeah. Does it feel, do you feel that? Some days a lot maybe, and other days it's not as evident. Yeah, a lot of churches are kind of doing this like, where'd everybody go? Where is everybody? Or, you know, just kind of, where's the energy level? Or is it just dispersed? Because we can do things on Zoom. Maybe there isn't that pressure, like 8 o'clock rolls around and the kids are tired and sleeping in. I don't know. Carol, you got something for us on Zoom?
Yeah, I think one of the things I've noticed is the lack of kids, the lack of children. We don't have the kid participation that we did before.
Yeah. Could you hear that in the back? The lack of kid participation. Yeah. Plenty of kids today. Yeah. I have some, I think this is one of those things that we're going to be studying and kind of thinking about the ramifications of COVID for a long time, but some of my speculations are that when schools went to distance learning, kids got really tired of being on screen all the time. And church Zoom, when school was also on Zoom or whatever, just was really hard. And then also patterns are so important to us. And so if you're used to every Sunday you get up, you get dressed, you get ready for church, and then all of a sudden you go 6 months, 9 months, a year and a half when you're not doing that. And then some other activities come in the meantime, hard to get back to those old patterns. Yeah, but you're not alone in this. Clerks of session do a fair bit of work at the beginning of the year and at the end of the year putting together statistics. Dave's nodding because I know his work on that, and I'm really eager to pour through those a little bit because I think A, you're not alone, and B, I'm curious to see kind of where are those numbers going to shake out and how they changed in the last few years. Some people say that the Presbyterian church has kind of took 20 years of change and it accelerated and got done all during COVID time. A lot of churches, for example, were pretty resistant to using screens in worship services. And all of a sudden, boom, there they are, they're up, right? Even for churches that said 4 years ago, we'll never have a screen in our sanctuary. Our use of technology, the ability to have a meeting where, you know, there might be a snowbird who's in Miami for a month, and turns out they can still be on at that committee meeting. So a lot of change got really accelerated, but some of those changes were membership decline. And I wonder also about 20 years of shrinking all happened boom at once. I don't know. What else? What else has changed for you since COVID? Yeah.
We only have one service, but two.
Yeah.
I can imagine 9 o'clock.
Yeah. So it had been 8 and 10:30, right, with an education hour in between, and you basically went back to your summer schedule. 9 o'clock stuff following. Yeah, it felt early to me. I said to Jennifer, I think you guys have the earliest starting worship time of any church in the Presbytery. I kept looking at my clock like, oh, okay, it is 9 o'clock, right? All right, I gotta get it. Eddie, did you have a hand up over there? Yeah. Dang. Yeah, okay. It's different. And some would have judgments about whether that difference is a good thing or a bad thing. All right. Yeah, less people may be involved in singing, like smaller choirs. And got it. We don't have a faith band anymore. Had been doing that. Yeah. Anything else that you've changed since COVID?
Interactions don't seem the same.
Interactions don't seem the same. Yeah, you want to say any more?
I think we all thought we would be able to, think many of us thought we would be going back to what we had before COVID. But we'll never be able to go back to that. But I think we tend to keep a little bit more physical distancing.
Yeah. A little more sitting at a table with your family, maybe. Mhm. Yeah, I mean, personally, my wife and I love to throw dinner parties. We haven't thrown a dinner party since pre-COVID. I mean, we had 2 people over at a time, but we tend to go like simpler, and we like, will that kind of ever come back? You know, that sense of like, it's scary to be close to people, and 3 years feels like a pretty big part of if you're 15 years old, 3 years is a big chunk of your life, right? 3 years of being 52, and I feel like it's still a huge part of my life. And will I go back to those pre-COVID interactions?
It almost feels like a trust in some ways.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a lot. Yeah.
We used to have a group, usually we got together for lunch after church.
Yep.
Now, first of all, like too early, and second, the whole atmosphere.
Yeah. So there used to be a group that would go out for lunch after church. Now with a 9 o'clock worship time, you'd be going out for brunch. But also it just feels different. Yeah. Yeah.
I'd say the changes outside the church are also affected.
Yes,
So
it can.
for me, I work in healthcare.
Yeah.
We are short-staffed, so I work every other weekend now.
Yeah.
So I used to be able to come a lot more, but now because I'm at work at the hospital, obviously I'm not here. So it's nice that there's the streaming on YouTube. I can watch it at a later time when it affects, because things outside of the church can affect your ability of what you're able to do.
Yes.
A lot of places are short-staffed, and that is affected that way.
The whole world feels short-staffed right now, right? And for those of us that are covering like more shifts or longer shifts, or, you know, I used to have 3 colleagues, but now there's just 1 colleague, and we're doing all that same work. It's exhausting, right? And there is that sense of like everybody's down people. Yeah. The hand up over there, Jennifer, or no? No, just a reaching for my coffee. Sorry. All right. So, yeah.
Lack of volunteers.
Lack of
Reduction
volunteers.
of
Yeah.
all the different areas that.
Yep. Yeah, and we're seeing that not just in churches, but in nonprofit world broadly. And you think about kind of how sharp that change happened with COVID, like all those nonprofit organizations that did meal deliveries or served meals, and suddenly shifted, right? In that sense of, we don't want volunteers interacting with each other. And it just, they're slow to come back. Yeah.
It's not just less bodies around to do stuff, it's less stuff. I mean, all the critical shortages that we supposedly have is starting with the toilet paper.
Yep, right.
You know, but and you know, this and that formula, and it's antipyretic medicine, and it's like, you know, it's crazy. I think it's how a lot of the world lives, that there's all these shortages, but you know, that's really a big change for us in America.
Yeah. So used to being able to get whatever we wanted right when we needed it, right? And then to suddenly have like, no, it's going to take you 2 weeks to get that. Or you go to the grocery store and the whole shelf of paper products is gone. It's like, yeah. Yep, over here.
It is getting very hard for the nominating team to get people willing to be leaders, especially elders in the church.
Yeah.
Some of it has to do with the shrinkage in general of congregation, but I think a lot of it has to do with just being leery of taking on responsibilities of that kind. And there's been some changes in the duties of the elders in session, because I think they're putting more responsibility, as I'm understanding, on those individuals who do serve.
Who's the they in that sentence? They're putting more responsibilities on the session. Locally here, you're saying elders, you gotta do that too, or are you talking about like Presbytery or national changes that are saying, and you've got to do this, and you've got to do that, or both? Session is saying more like we got to do this and this too. Yeah, because David, Mary were on a Zoom where we looked at one amendment, which would add some things to every session, some required training that would happen. And again, because I'm hearing that same thing. Hard to recruit people to serve on the session. It feels like the workload is getting bigger. And now there's going to be a proposed adding another requirement. Yeah, I hear you. I do think one of my principles, I like to pick a few things and do them really well. And maybe we're in this time where it's like, okay, of all the things we used to do, what's most important and how do we do that really well? And you recruit the people for that thing. And you might say, we used to do, if A, B, C, and D are really important and we're going to do those really well, you might go, we like E and F and G, but we just don't have the people power to do it. Or maybe they're not as important as A, B, C, and D. So, channeling that, a little bit of prioritization. But yeah, I hear you. Harder to nominate people. Yeah, over here.
And because we don't have people volunteering, our session has not been able to say, well, we're just not going to provide this. So then we pick it up.
Got it. Session says, who's going to do this? And you can't find nominees to do or volunteers to do that. So session goes, yeah, well, I guess we don't want that to fail. We better do that too. Yeah, Chris.
There's a whole nother level of skill requirements that's entered in since COVID that some feel qualified to manage and others are very intimidated by it. And so finding the middle of the road so we can get as many people on board, if you will,
Yeah,
in all situations, meetings, worship, all our gatherings, the technology is become a part of it that never was there before.
yeah. More skills are needed to do some of those tasks. I mean, I was watching John in the back there, like, he's pretty good at that soundboard, and he was doing the cameras, right? Cameras were probably fairly new for this church, and it's right. You can't just say, oh, John's sick today. Jane Doe, step in here, you'll figure it out. Right? Yeah. Anything else? What are you most proud of your church for what you're doing right now? What's something you're really pleased about or proud of your church for doing right now? Fellowship. You've got look at all you've got a ton of people here right now. Listen to some boring transitional general presbyter. Golly, that's impressive. Yeah, fellowship. What else? Yeah. Continuing to do Bible education. Yeah, great. Anything else? Yeah.
I think there's a lot of thought that's gone into planning the service.
A lot of thought puts in planning. Yeah. All right. Keep thinking about those questions. And we'll come back, we'll zero back to the pastoral search process in a minute. But I think being able to name what's special about this church.
Carol, did you have something?
Dave?
Yeah.
I think we had a search team that did the history of our church, and they did an awesome job. And just I really enjoyed hearing all those things that we just kind of take for granted and that we don't really realize. And they just did a really good job of presenting the history of the church, where the church is going, where the church is at. And I think they did an awesome job. So we do have some awesome people that are doing some awesome things.
Yeah. The mission study, I think, is what you're to, and I read it word for word, and good stuff, right? Some real hard work went into that, and that's going to be a good springboard for you, I do think. All right, let's move on here. So I've got this title, transitional. So much feels in transition right now. And it's really hard to say, boy, you know, in 3 years, this church is going to be like this. And certainly in the presbytery. You know, in 4 years, it's going to be really clear that the presbytery is, I'm not sure we know what's really clear about the next 3, 4, 5 years yet. I think we're still in transition. All right, so I've got this title, Transitional General Presbytery. Some of my colleagues have the title Executive. I'm curious how you interpret this word general. When you hear general presbyter, what do you think that means?
Jack of all trades.
Jack of all trades, a generalist rather than a specialist. Yeah, look out for the whole region, right? I don't have a specified, like I don't belong to Fond du Lac, I don't belong to Abbotsford, I belong to the whole region. Some people have said, so like, are you like a military leader? You like the Salvation Army, General Dave? No Presbyterian has really said that to me. And then presbyter. I'm really not a bishop, right? We don't have a top-down model of leadership. So like other presbyters are going to gather next week, either online or in Neenah. I get 1 vote. Dave, I think you're going to be there. You get 1 vote. Mary's going to be there. She gets 1 vote. So, you know, I'm not a bishop. I am one of many presbyters. When Ken recruited me, he said, you know, our Presbyterian planning calendar says it's per capita Sunday. So I want you to talk about per capita. So, which is a way of thinking about and funding the work of the church. It's a way of per capita. Anybody know what per capita means?
Per person.
Person or per head, right? Yep. We're going to watch a 3-minute video that one of my colleagues who's on staff in the Presbytery of the Grand Canyon put together. It's 3 minutes long, but I think it's actually like better than I could have spent creating something. So let's watch this real fast.
What is per capita, and why are we asked to pay per capita? The answer lies in the fact that the Presbyterian Church is a connectional church. Apostle Paul used the image of a body to describe the church. Christ is the head of the church, but all the other parts of the body need to work together to do the work of Christ. Your per capita dollars support 3 levels of our connectional ministry: the presbytery, synod, and the national offices, primarily the Office of General Assembly. One way to think about per capita dollars is that they help us, help you, help others, as together we do the work of Christ. Your per capita dollars support a wider network for your pastors and elders to support them through encouragement, dialogue, and resource provision. This support is especially needed during times of discernment and crisis. Per capita supports inquirers, candidates, and pastors seeking vocational discernment. In addition, it supports churches as they transition from one pastoral leader to the next. Each of our churches has missions they do and missions they support. Additionally, the wider church has regional, national, and world missions. Your per capita dollars help tell the stories of these missions and connect you to them and us to one another, that together Christ's work of justice and joy can be told. A primary way we tell the story of what our churches and mission partners are doing is through our weekly newsletter as well as our website. The work of the Connectional Church is supporting healthy governance, not just polity, but personnel, financial, and relational best practices. As a connectional church, there is a massive amount of resources available to support your ministry. But anyone who has been on the PCUSA website will tell you, finding those resources can be difficult. Your per capita dollars support presbytery staff and national office liaisons who help pastors and elders find the resources they need to do the work of Christ in their congregation. Your per capita dollars also support leadership training, training that is not only for pastors, but also for elders, and sometimes the entire congregation. Anyone with the spiritual gift of administration can tell you ministry is about more than just preaching and teaching, but also about doing the right things in the right way at the right time. Your per capita dollars support the office of the stated clerk, who ensures our Presbyterian congregations do things decently and in good order. On behalf of the Presbytery staff, I want to say thank you for your support of us through per capita dollars. You help us, help you, help others, all for the sake of Jesus Christ, who is the head of the church.
Let me just see if you have questions about per capita, and then I want to talk about the pastoral search process, and then just open it up, see what you got. Questions about per capita? It's going to be $38 for 2023. The Presbytery, so there's a portion that stays within the Presbytery, and we kept that flat this year. We've kept it flat, I think, for 3 years running. General Assembly went up $1, so 10% Synod went up $1, so it's 38 total. I think it went up from 37 last year. I think Presbytery actually subsidized a little bit last year. That's why it only went up $1 total. Other questions about per capita? One of the things I'm most proud of. I just feel like, you know, when I know there's a disaster going on in another part of the country, flooding, hurricane, something, the church is right there ready to respond, and it's partly because of per capita. When I hear that the Presbyterian Church is doing good things, it's generally funded by the system of per capita. All right, let's talk about the search process. Next week, you're going to be electing a pastor nominee. Woohoo! This is big. Many people say it's the most meaningful work they ever did in a church. You get to work together. You get to think about, like, what's the vision for the future. Some of that's going to be based on the mission study you've already written, and then you hear and you get to interview and you talk about pastors and you start dreaming. If you were our pastor, what would you want to focus on? If you were our pastor, what skills do you think you would need to improve to really do a great job? If you were a pastor, what's a story you remember that would help you be ready for being in Fond du Lac? I don't know, things like that. What I do know are you and especially the pastor nominating committee, but the whole church, you need to be ready to sell Fond du Lac. Not like put it up for sale, but you know, you need to promote why Fond du Lac would be a great place to live. We don't have a glut of clergy within Northeast Wisconsin that are just like wanting to shift. So probably your pastor may be coming from a different part of the country, maybe not far, but they may not know anything about Fond du Lac. So be ready to say, this is why life in Fond du Lac is really important to me. There is a shortage of clergy. Not as many people are going to seminary and graduating and going on into ministry. So the search process takes a while, generally speaking. I'm of the mind that it doesn't have to take as long as sometimes it does for churches. And the Presbytery will stand to support you and kind of go at the pace you're ready to go. But there are steps, and sometimes if you just learn about the steps, you'll understand the deadlines and things, you can accelerate it. And then we use a matching system within the denomination. Per capita helps fund this. It's called the Church Leadership Connection, where people looking for ministry jobs put their profile in, churches looking for pastors put their profile in, and it's like a bad dating system. It's how I described it. They're improving it, and it's going to be launched and updated this spring. What that may mean for Fond du Lac is the pastor nominating committee may need to live in the old system and create a new profile to live in the new system, and we'll help with that. I'm hopeful that it's going to be a decent dating system. And so, you know, we'll help with that, but there is a change underway there. All right, what do you got for me? Question?